Hello and welcome to Love from the Other Side, where we share near-death experiences of people from around the world. Today, we are going to step outside of the box of NDEs just a little bit, and we are going to share an STE, or a spiritually transformative experience. During an STE, experiences involve being out of one's body and or an immersion into a vastly expansive, vivid, and lucid reality. The aftermath of an STE often results in dramatic, permanent, and very positive transformations in one's personality. So today we bring you such an experience from Carlos. Here's his story. My mother was a widow when I was born in February 1963. I was born only 3 weeks after my biological father passed away. I was told very little about him when I was a child, except that he was a good and loving man who was now with God in heaven. I do not remember exactly when, but I do have a vague memory of making a strong decision to find him no matter what. I did not know where God or heaven was, but I was going to find out, and I was going to meet my dad. Later on in life, I had this epiphany where I realized that every single thought I chose, every decision I made, with every breath I took, in every corner I turned, and everywhere I ever looked, was in hopes of perhaps finding him there. That's how determined I was. I remember also as a kid, I was watching the movie King of Kings on TV, and when seeing the scene of Jesus' sermon in the Mount of Olives, I felt so inspired by his love that I thought to myself, I want to be like him. The moment I finished that thought, it was as if I had sparkly bubbles up and down my entire body. I will never forget that feeling. This may seem irrelevant to an NDE that happened decades later, but it's not. This background information offers context to where the NDE and its significance can be better understood, for they are closely related. Fast forward now to 1998. I was then married and had become a holistic therapist. All things seemed okay, but I was deeply dissatisfied with how I lived my life. I had always done my very best to be loving and kind, yet everything I did seemed to end up causing some type of suffering one way or the other. Things got to the point where I did not know how to live anymore. I felt I was a complete failure and fell into deep despair and depression. I would sob for hours and hours, praying to be relieved from such suffering, begging to be shown a better way to live. Everything crumbled fairly fast at that point. I was seriously contemplating suicide. My wife and I separated. The deal I made to rent a room fell through at the very last moment, and I ended up staying with a friend. Absolutely nothing had worked out the way I intended it. Financially, I was ruined, and even thinking triggered deep emotional pain. It was as if I was being ripped apart inside. The only thing I could do was to completely surrender my entire existence to God. So I did. My friend, the one who took me in for a while, had an extensive library in her home and invited me to pick a book if I wanted to read something. I felt attracted to 3 books. One of the titles was the Yeshua Letters, and it felt right to start with that one, so I did. In the introduction, it says something like, "Let the words in this book speak directly to you." I was so humbled that I took that as a directive. I was right. As I was reading the book, it felt as if the words were truly intended for me. There was a directness in it that I had not experienced before, even though I had read hundreds of books before this one. The events the author of the Yeshua letters, as he described them in the book, seemed to have a parallel to my own life. This gave me a sense that this book had really been intended for me. What was more fantastic is that I would have a certain experience during the day and then see it described in the book after I experienced it. I was not manufacturing it. This was happening for real. As I was nearly unemployed and with lots of time on my hands, I took the advice of my then Reiki teacher, and whenever I had a moment, I would sit and do nothing. I would not even try to meditate. That's when things slowly started to happen. At times, I would be sitting by the Rouge River near my friend's house, and I would see and fully comprehend that animals do not worry about anything at all, and yet they have all they need. They are happy. My senses started to really become more sharp and alive when I would just sit. One time I clearly saw a spider web way in the distance. It was shining with the different rainbow colors as it was barely moved by the summer breeze. I would usually read a few pages of the Yeshua letters at night, right before going to bed, somewhere around midnight. But then suddenly I would find myself awake, invariably at 3 a.m. on the dot. That is when this same presence that was speaking through the book would move my body, gently rolling it out of bed, landing softly on my knees exactly where I had placed my small meditation carpet. I would sit and do nothing for I don't know how long, in complete darkness, until one night a different presence was felt. It started as a small point of deep tenderness in my heart, and then this tenderness grew stronger and stronger. The feeling was one of such a tender, warm, and motherly love. Tears started to fall, but I was not crying. It was at this point that I had my life review. Every memory I ever had, every regret that had caused me to hate myself, was being washed away with this incredible compassion and uncompromising love. I knew beyond a doubt that this was the presence of what we know as Mother Mary. She untied every knot I had in my heart, purifying it and setting me free to meet her Son. I was so relieved. I had never felt this much gratitude in my entire life. I had entered a sacred space of such profound and complete peace, which I stayed there for I don't know how long. Time was entirely irrelevant now. I was so present that I could feel every organ functioning, the blood flowing through my veins and through the entire body. I started flowing, the breath as it became more and more subtle. My heartbeat slowed down. Together with the breath, my whole body was falling into ease and complete natural relaxation. Deeper and deeper, all sense of strain dissolved until I felt the heart beat no more. The breath had stopped as well, completely, but I was totally calm. A cocoon had formed around me, and I could feel it at different times before, but this time it was as if I could almost touch it. I was sensing it all from inside my body. But then, when everything stopped, I found myself watching my body from above it, as if I were observing it from the ceiling of the apartment. I saw the body just sitting there, like a piece of stone placed on the floor. Nothing was moving. I knew that I, or the body rather, had entered into a suspended state at best. The body was dead. This is just the way it was. I had no thoughts or feelings about it. It was just a body, neither alive nor dead. The next thing I remember was feeling a buzz arising from this peace, a familiar vibration, a presence. It was the same presence I felt or sensed while reading the book days before. I had no doubt this was Christ. I call him Yeshua. I could see him, but not as an image or shape, the way we know shapes or forms. I could feel its light radiating everywhere. It approached me slowly, and I could feel it. I knew the entire universe was under his complete command. No one will ever convince me otherwise. It's not a matter of belief for me. There simply is no other truth. Without words and without sound, this presence, whose essence I knew very well from before time existed, and who knew all about me, who knew everything about everything, asked me if I really wanted to die. I thought, I just want to go home. You cannot lie to the one who knows you so intimately. This was the truth. I did not want to die. In response, I felt a pull or a tug to my right. Turning my attention there, I saw Christ as the most indescribable, radiant, powerful, ever divine light essence coming through an immense golden portal surrounded by infinity. I instantly knew it was the portal of death. Christ was on the other side, and I could feel him inviting me to come to him where he was. At that point, I made a pause and sort of wondered what would happen if I went through the portal. But then I realized that Christ, or Jesus, was on the other side. He was also extending himself through and past the portal to reach me, and he was okay. The moment I realized that, I suddenly and swiftly went past the portal onto the other side. This was the most exhilarating aspect of the entire experience because I had gone through death and I was still alive. I am immortal. Death is nothing but a grand illusion. The complete expansiveness of joy I felt at the moment could not be put into words. Carlos was dead, but I was more alive than ever. Carlos never existed. The earth and the universe never existed. People and things are just baseline illusions. The whole of heaven was celebrating and rejoicing with me on arrival. I was back. I could hear heavenly bells, trumpets, angelic choirs, laughter, all kinds of happy, joyful sounds of infinite gladness, for which we have no name here on earth, because those things do not exist here. I felt the unspeakable, all-encompassing, unconditional love of God for me. It felt really personal, and because of its unconditional character, it's almost incomprehensible, to the point where I thought, all of this love for me? Who am I? I'm just a boy who grew up in a middle lower class family, in a regular neighborhood, went to a regular school. I have no accomplishments. I have never done anything remarkable. I'm just a regular guy, a normal human. What have I done to deserve all of this? Is all this love really for me? The moment I finished that thought, I was instantly swallowed up by this amazing love. I was completely gone. There was nothing but love. No me, no God, just internal, incomprehensible, indescribable, total, complete, absolute love. Oh, there is another thing too, but I just don't know where it fits in the chronological sequence, because there is no sequence. The moment I died, I encountered an automatic choice. Either I could come back to the same body, or I could choose a different one. It just made sense to return to the same body and to use it to finish my business here. It's amazing how incredibly practical the soul is. To take a different body meant to build a personality and psychological, physical, and emotional states and frameworks all over again from scratch. This involves recreating many experiences of suffering and pain at all levels. Another important point I've learned is that the soul does not ever come into this realm of time and space. What seems to come here is just a tiny aspect of an infinite mind that still believes in separation, which is the source from all our fears, including, of course, the fear of death, which is nothing but an effect of our belief in separation from all life, from God, from our one self, and all there is. So my experience of heaven was rather short for what I recall. I did not go straight back to business by creating my future life experiences before coming back to the body. I felt as if I was in the eye of a furious whirlwind of really fast images of future experiences, accompanied by a deafening noise, as if under an enormous, gigantic waterfall. That was my NDE experience of being in a tunnel. Then suddenly I was back in my body, which felt like a lousy, loud thump. I was so disappointed and sad. I recuperated very well thanks to the blessing of acceptance and the fresh memory of the I am in truth. I was remembering it was not real, yet now I was suddenly sitting in a completely darkened room again, alone. I sat there for a while until it was time to go to bed again. This was the most amazing experience, and it was followed by 4 weeks of being here but not here. I experienced all the stages of human development, all the way up to complete enlightenment. I was guided in every step. Whatever question I had was either instantly answered, or in the absence of an answer, I would receive an immediate understanding of the lack of need for the question from the start. My mind was completely empty. If I needed a thought, it was given. Directions as to what to do were always there. If I needed something, I would either effortlessly find it or it would be given to me. My words or my silence was perfect in all circumstances. I did not know anything, and yet I understood how God, Spirit, nature, and the cosmos worked and operated. I would attract wild animals like a magnet, and they loved being around me, even raccoons. And I knew they were God's messengers, reminding me of how loved I am and that I was not alone. I was perfect and pure and innocent, yet my mind was fighting it at times. It could not reconcile the total contrast of experiences. Slowly, the perfect state started to dissipate and the hard lessons started to come my way. This is for what I was here. There was one more time when Yeshua appeared to me. I was lying down in my bed. From a picture of him on the wall, the same familiar hums started growing until the room was filled with his presence. I felt a sudden, sharp pain in my left soul. I thought, if you could take the nails on the cross, I can certainly accept this. The moment I said that in my mind, a flush of electricity went down my leg, and I heard the first question, would you seek God and nothing but God? And I saw an image of myself turning back on a city skyline to face the stars. Internally, I said yes. The same process of sharp pain, acceptance, and current going down my leg happened twice more. The other 2 questions were, would you accept Christ as your only identity? And would you bring everyone to heaven with you? With this, I saw an image of everyone as an innocent child of God. Of course, I said yes to these questions as well. I immediately saw 365 flashing in deep blue and gold numbers flashing on my forehead, and his presence then just dissolved. I thought I had a full year to fulfill my promise, and as time went by, I realized how difficult this was for me to do. A whole year went by, and I thought I had failed miserably. Now I was in real trouble. I had the most sublime of all possible experiences as a human being possibly could hope for, offered to me purely by the grace of God. Yet I felt I was falling back and back and back, further and further from what I desired to do. As a thought of miserably betraying God and Yeshua and myself and everything I held dear and sacred became more and more intense, my mom came to visit me from Argentina for my birthday. On February 8th of the year 2000, she gave me as a gift of a golden cross with a star, where normally you'd see the crucified body hanging. That visit was the very last time my mom and me saw each other. That same day, my girlfriend at the time gave me a book. She apologized in advance, saying that she had never seen the book before, but that it felt good to buy it for me. The book is called A Course in Miracles, and prior to that day, I had seen it only once at a bookstore, but decided it was not for me. When I opened it, the very first thing I saw was the same identical star on the cover as the one that was on the cross my mom gave me. The second thing I saw once I opened it was the number 365, the number I had seen in my vision. That's when it dawned on me what the real plan was. The course comes with workbook lessons, 365 of them, one for each day of the year. It's by practicing the lessons in forgiveness that I get to fulfill my 3 promises. The book is renowned for having been scribed by a woman who heard a voice that identified itself as Jesus of Nazareth. It is a practice in mind training, so the thoughts of fear can be forgiven and replaced by loving thoughts instead. Everything in that book corresponds exactly with not only my NDE, but also with nearly all the experiences I had immediately after and even before I died. Some of them are described in uncanny, identical details to what I experienced. Long before all this happened, a client mentioned a Course in Miracles group, which met once a week, just a block from where I had my office. I ended up completing 3+ years of post-secondary education and training that the people holding this weekly meeting offered on transpersonal psychology, based on the principles and tenets of the course. There are many more pre- and post-NDE details, uncanny serendipities, and mystical experiences, and unexplainable miracles happening in my life, all to help me go past and learn the lessons offered through the bouts of alcoholism and other addictions. I'm not ashamed or regret any of this, although I had become very, very angry with God and with my soul at times of excruciating emotional pain. Because of this, I can truly relate to most people's experiences, and I hold a clear, ample insight space and words of unconditional love and acceptance for those who are sent my way to help me. I can now, post-NDE, get through the worst experiences so much faster than I ever did, whereas before I would be stuck in a rut for months and months and months at a time. Now, in maybe a few days or even only an hour or just a few minutes, I'm back on my feet again, feeling joyous, optimistic, and strong. As I communicated to the guide and helper I met and joined during my NDE, I do now remember none of these seemingly harsh calamities are true. They are just lessons I want to learn and nothing else. Thank God. I describe it as full sensory and extrasensory awareness. It is and was boundless. I had no psychological buffers or barriers to experience in the way we generally have here on Earth. Well, that is our experience for today. There is much more detail on this experience. If you would like to read it, I will put a link in the About section of this video. If you haven't done so yet, I would really appreciate you being the newest subscriber to our channel, Love from the Other Side. Until next time, God bless.